The atrium of the Lagos International Tech Summit shimmered like a polished mirror. Crystal chandeliers spilled liquid light onto silk gowns, tailored suits, and the polished smiles of Africa's elite. Zion Okafor, tech vindicant, charming keynote speaker, and husband to Liana Okoro, moved through the crowd with the practiced ease of a man who'd built his image like code, clean, flawless, curated. Beside him floated Kayoma Ease, her laughter a glittering ripple that drew eyes. Liana trailed, quiet, elegant in an under-the-radar way, the kind of woman who would rather listen than dominate the room. At the champagne lounge, the circle tightened. Kayoma, with a glass in her hand, slid forward. "Zion," she purred, "you really outdid yourself with the guest list this year. And who is this?" Her smile, sharp as a headline, flicked toward Liana. Zion offered a distant half-smile. "This is my wife," he said, and the words landed like a polite footnote rather than a declaration. Kayoma leaned in, voice soft but carrying like a MICO. "I didn't realize the CEO's wife was casual." Her tone suggested, plain, unremarkable. The others around them tittered, like a ripple starting a wave. "We were expecting someone more polished. You know, someone who reflects the brand." Liana smiled politely, heart tightening. One of Kayoma's friends added, "She must have missed the memo on presentation." Silence, then a soft chuckle from someone high enough in influence that no one dared contradict. Zion didn't speak up. He shifted the conversation to product metrics, leaving Liana standing like an unfinished sentence. Later, alone in the hallway, she stared at her reflection in the glass, seeing the woman everyone was quietly defining for her. She had built her life around being steady, supportive. She had chosen quiet over spectacle because noise had always felt like betrayal, to herself and to the life she and Zion were supposed to share. Her phone buzzed. A message from Zion, "You okay?" "Backstage in 5. She typed, "I'm fine." He didn't reply. In the VIP exit garden, a few steps behind the laughing crowd, Liana lowered her gaze. The night air carried the scent of frangipani and status. She slipped out, not in tears. There was too much grit wrapped in her silence for that, but with a hollow weight that knocked against the places she thought were strong. The gala continued inside. The world kept sparkling. She disappeared into the dark. The next morning, the internet did what it did best: amplify, reduce, package, and sell. Gossip feeds exploded with the gala's highlights. The latest barbs were top trending. CEO's wife looks like she's in last season's fashion. Zion Okafor's choice raises eyebrows. Does she fit the brand? Comments stacked, cheap and sharp. The social media cycle had already primitive morphed her quietness into a story. At the office, Zion's PR team buzzed like bees. "We need to manage the narrative," his communications director murmured, scrolling through curated screenshots. Kayoma's host of influencers are already running with it. The wife circle is talking. If we don't spin, the story becomes about her instead of his rising Series B. Zion leaned back in his glass-walled corner office, fingers steepled. "Let it die," he said coolly. "It's noise. We have the product launch next quarter." One of his senior strategists shifted uncomfortably. But if the perception is that he's with someone who doesn't reflect the company's image, investors will notice. Influencers will pull the lens wider. In the same city, Liana watched the headlines with a quiet fury, not for herself, but because silence had become a soundbite they dressed up and weaponized. Her mother called. "Baby, I saw it. You looked so hate." "I'm okay, Mama." They said things. Let them talk. Their mouths don't define me. You don't have to wear their approval like a crown. She didn't tell her mother about the hollow in the spaces where her husband's defense should have been. At their penthouse, in a room where every item was a symbol of success, Liana entered quietly while Zion was in a meeting. She placed her hand on the back of his empty chair, feeling more like a guest than a partner. The silence between them had become a third presence. Later, in a low-lit cafe, Kimi, Liana's assistant, arrived with a stack of fashion campaign drafts. Elle Amani is blowing up the skincare scene in Accra, she said, excited. They're using a face that's not traditionally perfect, and people are loving it. The comments are wild. It's like the world is hungry for realness. Liana's eyes didn't light up. Who is Elle Amani? A new brand identity. She's the face of the campaign. No one knows her story, and people are reacting to that. It's messy in the best way. Liana sipped the coffee, its bitterness matching something inside her. When they mock me for not fitting a mold, she murmured, they forget I'm not the one who chose it. Kimi hesitated. Do you want to be seen differently? Liana looked up. I want to be understood. But if the world only hears through their microphones, I'll find a way to change the channel. The chapter ends with a split screen. Zarian in boardroom lights, projecting control, and Liana alone in her apartment, scrolling through a high-resolution campaign image of Elle Amani on a billboard in Accra. The woman's calm, striking face held a quiet power. Liana copies the campaign link, then closes it. Something stays. It was a rainy Tuesday, the kind where the city's rhythm slows briefly, making people look at the windows and their own reflections. Liana sat in her study, trying to read a report for a charity initiative she had quietly funded, when a polite knock came. Ms. Okoro. A woman entered, soaked slightly at the hem, carrying a portfolio the size of a miniature screenplay. Her eyes were sharp, curious, and carried the relaxed confidence of someone who had spent years uncovering beauty where others only saw flaws. Dr. Nene Basie. I'm sorry to bother you, but I've been looking for you, Nene said, closing the door gently. Not the Liana the world thinks they know. Liana Okoro. Liana's brow lifted. You've never met me. I know what you've been made to represent. Nene spread out glossy photos, campaign mock-ups, analytics, regional consumer reaction data. And I know what you actually are. I run a movement trying to expand beauty definitions in Africa. Our brand is launching, and we need a face that doesn't just sell, it speaks. Not through perfection, but truth. I think you could be that face. Liana snapped the portfolio shut. You don't know me. I'm not a model. I don't want a model, Nene countered. Models are cast. You're discovered. There's a difference. Silence, then a tired smile. Why me? Because you carry a story people are starving to believe in. Because you were visible enough to be mocked, yet quiet enough for them to ignore everything about you except what made them feel better calling you less. You were built by their expectations, and I want to help you rebuild your narrative on your terms. Liana sat back. I thought revenge was loud. You're offering something quieter. I'm offering power, Nene said. The kind they can't take away with a whisper. You could be the launchpad for a brand that changes the conversation about African beauty. And, if you want, we can introduce you as Elle Amani. No one needs to know it's the same woman they mocked at that gala. Liana stared at the rain tracing lines down the window. There was comfort in anonymity, a shield. There was also the ache of being unseen behind the noise. What's the price? She asked. Time, trust, and the willingness to show a part of yourself they've tried to edit out. Nene extended her hand. Come with me for a week. No commitments. See how it feels to be the one writing the code instead of being debugged by others. Liana hesitated, then took the hand. It was the first public decision she had made for herself in a long time. That night, she sent a short message to Zan. I'm going away for a bit. I'll explain when I return. He didn't reply. The week after the meeting with Dr. Nene began with silence. Liana went to the first consultation, tasted luxury in a new shape, not in vanity, but in deliberate care. The stylists weren't trying to erase her. They were coaxing out lines that had always existed but were hidden under years of self-effacement. The skincare regimen wasn't about changing who she was, it was about amplifying her presence. The alias Elle Amani was born in hushed brainstorming rooms where she chose the syllables herself, meaning she who has faith and peace intertwined. 2 days in, Nene returned with a proposal. We're ready to shoot the campaign. Lagos first, then Accra, then the world notices. But first, the medium needs a spark. You have to be emotionally unchained. Are you in? Liana hesitated. I can't do this publicly. Not yet. I need control. I need to know all the pieces. Nene nodded. You're one of the few who asks the right questions. Then we wait. The right launch has a rhythm. I'll push the preliminary teasers into private circles. Let curiosity build. It was the same evening that Liana's curiosity turned inward. She had a moment alone in the apartment, thinking of the way Zion had drifted further away. She withdrew his tablet, something he left in the living room, a small recklessness she had never confronted before. It was unlocked by default. Her fingers hesitated. She told herself it was to check a calendar, but the screen lit to reveal a thread of messages she hadn't seen before. Kayoma's name glowed from a notification. Can't wait to see you after the gala. That dress you wore. Stunning. We should catch up. Zion seems distracted. Zion, you know I'm mostly busy. Maybe dinner next week. Kayoma, you deserve someone who gets you. Someone who understands the importance of presentation. Zion, you're different. That's why I like talking to you. Liana felt a slow heat rising, not anger like a firecracker, but the deep, cutting cold of betrayal wrapped with a familiar ache. She scrolled more, finding a pattern, flirtations under the guise of networking, offhanded comments about how she handles herself in public. Images of private dinners with Kayoma, taken with a disguised phone. The man she had trusted as partner had been giving pieces of himself away in the language of attention to someone who had publicly thrown shade at her. She closed the tablet and slid it back. The weight in her chest settled into a decision. The transformation she was building wasn't just about public image anymore. It was about reclaiming agency over her life from a man who had been rewriting his loyalty in private messages. She replied to Nene, let's launch. I want to see the world take notice. No more hiding. Later, at dinner, Zion walked in, picked at his fork, and finally noticed her. You've been quiet, he said, the tone neutral. I've been building, she replied. You've been looking elsewhere. His face shifted, a flicker, then the practiced smoothness. We all need distractions. I'm focused on the board, Liana. That's what matters. And what about what matters to me? She asked softly. The conversation ended not with resolution, but with the feeling of two people walking parallel lines that would dangerously intersect soon. The first campaign shoot happened in an old warehouse repurposed into a luminous studio. Sunlight poured through high windows, catching dust motes like tiny stars, an irony for a story about light being found where it was hidden. Elle Amani was introduced to the crew as a new concept, not a name everyone knew yet. There was a quiet tension in the air, not of doubt, but of anticipation. Someone on set whispered, "She doesn't look like anyone we've seen before." That was the point. The stylist, a woman named Bimp, adjusted the collar on Elle's oversized silk jacket. "Beauty isn't about erasing who you were," she said, leaning in. "It's about making the world stop and feel you." "Oh," Liana nodded, watching herself through another lens. The camera approached slowly. The director, foreign and African in equal measure, gave the cue. No smile, just presence. Frames were captured, close-ups of eyes that held resilience, of skin glowing in natural light, of hands adjusting a simple earring, something symbolic of her roots. The first teaser was a black and white clip, a woman, the alias, turning slightly, her name flashing in gold script, Elle Amani. The tagline, "Beauty that's seen, not assigned." Within 48 hours, the teaser hit private influential circles, leaked just enough to plant questions. Influencers reposted, marketers reshared, conversations started. The world didn't know her yet, but it felt her. Kimi flew in, breathless. It's already working. People are arguing about who she is. Is she new? Is she old money? Someone said she looks familiar. Liana looked at the comments tiled across a private dashboard. They're looking, she said. Now we control what they find. Meanwhile, Zayn watched a viral thread in a morning news roundup. Who is Elle Amani? One headline read. Mystery face redefining African beauty. Another. He frowned as the algorithm pushed it up his feed, and beneath it, a small internal project notification, potential collaboration opportunity from Elle Amani's brand. Suggested tie-in for upcoming luxury launch. He didn't connect the dots. Yet, the chapter ends with Elle standing before a mirror in her temporary suite, not dazzling, just herself, quietly armored in confidence. In the reflection, she saw Liana, not erased, but reborn. The music fades into a heartbeat rhythm as the screen cuts to black, overlaid with, next, her face takes over Lagos. The morning after Elle Amani's teaser went viral, Lagos's luxury sector woke up with a tremor. Boardrooms that had once ignored the quiet corners of transformative branding were now scrambled, filling with speculative chatter. Elle's campaign had been a whisper that became a roar, and the first ripple was felt where it hurt most, in Zayn Okafor's carefully curated empire. Tega Mensah, billionaire investor, visionary philanthropist with a taste for underdog brilliance, had taken notice. He was hosting a private breakfast with potential partners to discuss an upcoming African Renaissance lifestyle platform, and the luminous ambiguity of Elle Amani was the unspoken topic. She's not just a face, Tega said, stirring his espresso. She's a mirror. The public is looking for someone who reflects them, not their elites. Imagine aligning with her before the rest realize she's already the movement. One of the venture heads, a woman with a sharp jaw and sharper instincts, leaned in. Our luxury skincare partner is in talks with Zayn's conglomerate. If Elle's brand signs distribution first, it'll yank that exclusivity narrative out from under them. That could bleed into perception of Zayn's brand as stagnant. Across town, Zayn opened a memo from his head of partnerships, Elle Amani brand showing traction in unexpected markets. Potential for dual collaboration, he paused, fingers hovering. The recommendation suggested a preliminary meeting, the sort that would place his company as the bridge between established tech wealth and emergent cultural capital. He forwarded it with a one-line note, schedule exploratory call. Liana, now operating with a new team under the Elle Amani identity, had meetings scheduled too. Nene had pushed for an exclusive partnership with a luxury distribution network that had been courting Zayn's luxury vertical for months. Their pitch was blunt. The world needed a brand with authenticity that could package it in elegance. Tega, impressed by the teaser and the quietly confident woman who had shown up without a name, agreed to back the rollout with a strategic distribution deal across West Africa. Bring them the narrative they want to hear, Nene told Elle. Then give them the truth they didn't know they needed. The signed agreement, the Amanatega Lux Distribution Accord, was the first public handshake that placed Elle not just in the market, but ahead of the game. The release dropped with a glossy video, Liana's face, now Elle's, overlaid on the Lagos skyline, the tagline reading, "This isn't a comeback, it's an arrival." That evening, Zayn's team got wind of the news. The luxury partnership that had been a crown jewel in Zayn's expansion roadmap was quietly being edged out by Elle Amani's brand. The boardroom that had once echoed with his confident declarations now murmured with concern. "We can still pivot," his PR head said. "We could propose a co-branded initiative. It'll look seamless. Tech meets beauty." He's already aware of how influence. "Let's make it strategic." Zayn watched the Elle Amani film, feeling the prickling of something he couldn't name, admiration, envy, and a fracture of recognition. "She's good," he admitted silently, unaware that the face-shifting markets and destabilizing his plans was the woman whose name he had been careless with. Meanwhile, Kimi sent a secure message to Liana. "They're talking about you as a threat. Kyoma's circle has started scraping any trace of your past. They are jittery." Liana's reply came back, "Let them stare. We're not playing that old game." The chapter closes with a split screen. Zion in a glass tower trying to engineer a new narrative, and Liana walking into a small manufacturing partner's warehouse in Surrey, where workers were unboxing the first shipment of Elle Amani skincare kits headed for high-end boutiques. On a wall behind her, a mock-up of the upcoming Billboard read, "She owns every version of herself." The applause, public and internal, was swelling, and the audience was just starting to realize what they'd been missing. Pressure built like heat under a lid. Kyoma's agents had ramped up their offensive. Old photos, insider stories, and sudden attempts to paint Elle Amani as a manufactured fraud. The same feeds that had lifted Elle up were now saturated with hints, innuendos, and whispered exposés questioning her origin. Somewhere between speculation and smee, the narrative was at risk of being warped into a scandal. Kimi sat in a quiet cafe, shaking slightly. She had spent years watching Liana smile through other people's assumptions, and now she watched the world try to rewrite this story before Liana fully controlled it. She pulled out her phone and recorded a voice note, then deleted it. She typed a message to a journalist she'd met briefly at a cultural summit, one known for sensitive, smart storytelling. "I have something that will change how people see Elle Amani. I can't say much here. Meet me at the rooftop of the Ikoyi Art Center in 1 hour. Bring an open mind." The journalist, a woman named Aisha Okoro, no relation, arrived cautious, eyebrows raised. Kimi slid over a thick envelope. "It's not a hit piece," Kimi started. "It's a thread they can't pull apart without breaking themselves. Elle Amani, who everyone thinks is a mystery brand, was previously erased. She's the one that group at the Gala laughed at. The same people trying to discredit her now are the ones who mocked her publicly, and she's not who they think she is." Aisha flipped through the contents. Old event photos, a discrete timeline of the Gala, screen captures of the mocking comments, and then, carefully, the trajectory that led to Elle Amani's quiet transformation. "You're betraying her trust," Aisha said softly, looking up. "I'm protecting her," Kimi shot back. "They're about to weaponize their own hate into a scandal. She didn't ask for this. But if we don't tell them what really happened, the void will be filled with their lies. Let them know this is not a manufactured identity. This is reclamation." Aisha agreed to an anonymous pre-publication piece, the woman they mocked as the face they are trying to discredit. The article threaded the past humiliation with the present rise, tying Elle Amani's authenticity to the very cruelty that birthed her reinvention. When it went live, the comments landscape shifted. The narrative fractured, some applauding the resilience, others suspicious of the timing. But the core fact, Elle's origin became visible on the public record, framed not as a scandal but as a powerful truth. Kyoma's camp reacted with fury. A leaked message from one of her strategists read, "They're trying to humanize her. Pull up the archived glam shots. Create a counter-narrative about hidden agendas." In a quiet room, Liana watched the article with Kimi beside her. "You didn't ask." "I asked myself what loyalty looked like," Kimi replied. "You were getting dragged into a fight where they'd have the only microphone. Now, the story has context. They can't gaslight a transformation if the origin is public." Liana exhaled, a tremor of relief leaking through. "We're not safe," she said, "but we're seen." The chapter ends with the internet echoing the new headline, and inside Zion's headquarters a whisper spreads. Is Elle Amani connected to Liana Okoro? He shuts his laptop before clicking, his face calm, but the seed of doubt was planted, and the ecosystem around him began pulling threads. The story's velocity jumped. Social media, always hungry for revelation, turned the new context into speculation boards and content gold. Side-by-side compilations flooded TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and Twitter threads. Fans edited clips of Liana being dismissed at past events with the new Elle Amani commercials, using split-screen effects, emotionally charged soundtracks, and text overlays. She was mocked. Now she's the reason they are trembling. Creators did what algorithms favored: juxtaposition, drama, truth. Viral voices added narration. You don't rise from being erased. You rebuild the world that tried to keep you small. Kyoma watched, her social team firing off reactive content. They tried disinformation, planting fake insider leaks that Elle was a staged experiment by foreign investors to undermine African brands. The public, however, was already reshaping the narrative. The whispers of admiration outnumbered the smears. Hashtags like #Elle Amani and #Liana acclaim trended across platforms. A late-night YouTube influencer, Famke, filmed her deep dive video. "It's the kind of story that hurts for the people who tried to keep her invisible," she said to camera. She wasn't just discovered. She crafted herself from their derision. That's not revenge. That's rewriting the software. Her video exploded. Zayn couldn't ignore it anymore. He watched a montage with a cold cup of coffee growing lukewarm beside him. The video thumbnail had his own face in the background, blurred, and a spotlight on Elle Amani's transformation. Comments speculated, is Zayn behind this? Is Elle his wife? He ignored her. She built an empire. He called his PR lead. Get me the deep dive. Who is she? Where is she from? Why is our brand even tangentially involved? His team scrambled to patch a query. We're researching potential partnerships. She's unverified. The public is making their own associations. Recommend a soft outreach. Meanwhile, Liana sat in a small but tastefully decorated makeshift office, watching the numbers climb, not just followers, but cultural resonance. She recorded a short, unscripted video, not for the press, but for the people who had seen the subtle violence of being made invisible. You called me invisible to feel important. I learned to build in the quiet. Now that you see me, know that I was never missing. I was choosing who got to look. The clip was shared. It didn't need a polished preamble. It hit like a truth grenade. The chapter ends with the sound of a notification inside Zayn's office. A message from his lead investor. Public perception is shifting. Elle Amani's narrative is strong. We need clarity on her relation to the Okafor brand. He sat in silence. The screen reflected his own face, and a faint image of Liana's, superimposed in the background of one of the viral videos, hovered like a ghost of a decision he hadn't made. The pressure intensified. Shareholders asked questions in prepared calls. Media outlets, sensing a story with layers, requested commentary on the Elle Amani phenomenon. The question wasn't just about beauty. It was about control, perception, relevance. The empire Zayn built on being ahead of trends suddenly felt unmoored. Who is managing the narrative? A board member asked curtly. Because this seems less like a competitor and more like a mirror reflecting all the things we ignored. Zayn's answer was measured. We've been observing. We're entering dialogue to understand potential synergies. But internally, he felt something like vertigo. Elle Amani wasn't just a rising star. She was unearthing the blind spots his brand had allowed, the outdated metrics of image that had made him blind to the woman beside him. Kyoma's camp escalated to desperation. She appeared on a daytime talk show, presenting herself as the visionary who had always supported Zayn and suggesting that Elle's rise was a misappropriation of image, crafted by outsiders trying to destabilize local brands. The segment had ratings, but it also sparked backlash. People flooded comments with, "She's trying to steal a story she helped start by mocking the woman who lived it." In the midst of the chaos, Zayn requested a private dinner with Liana. The room was quiet, the kind where silence thrummed with unspoken lines. "You've been very visible," he began. "People are connecting things." Liana didn't look surprised. Visibility isn't always voluntary. "You could have come to me. I came to you when I needed something real. You gave me silence." He leaned back. Elle Amani is a smart move. Strategic. "She's mine." "You made her. That's impressive." His tone had an edge, half pride, half something else. Regret, maybe, a wounded ego. "But you could have done it with me." She stood. "You were too busy choosing who looked good next to you to see the empire that was quietly growing beside you." He watched her leave, The way she carried herself not as the wife he had paused on, but as the architect of a movement. That night, his advisors pushed for a recalibration. We need to look collaborative. If we don't, the market will frame this as us being outdated, while she's modern resilience. He agreed to a staged celebratory meetup, an idea that sounded more like a containment strategy than genuine alliance. The chapter closes with the image of Zayn preparing a public-facing handshake with Elle Amani, his team drafting language that emphasized shared values while his internal message read, "Need to understand her leverage before she overshadows us completely." Outside, the city's headlines glowed. She built what he ignored. The foundation of his empire wobbled in the reflection of her billboard. Power unsettled envy. Kyoma, bruised by her diminishing relevance and watching her social capital erode while Elle Amani's star rose uncontrollably, went on the offensive. It was no longer enough to whisper. She needed a spectacle to shift the narrative, to paint Liana as imposter, manipulator, someone unworthy of the movement she carried. Her team hired deep-dive reputation managers to search for anything that could be reframed. Old personal photos, family rumors, undocumented loan agreements, the kind of stuff that lived in the near-invisible crevices of public lives. They pulled up pictures of Liana's childhood, slimmed and colored to look staged. They contacted a former acquaintance from a charity project and planted a story about hidden debts connected to Elle Amani's rise. They pushed a whisper campaign. Elle Amani is constructing a false narrative to mask a bot identity. The public, conditioned by previous virality, paid attention, but the emotional tide had shifted. People were tired of convenient villains. The smear attempts, overly aggressive and visibly manufactured, backfired in pockets. "They are trying too hard," the comment sections read. Kyoma went to a high-visibility media outlet with what she called proof, a curated set of before images of Elle Amani that made her look like a generic influencer who had borrowed identity from African heritage aesthetics without acknowledgement. She did a live interview, wearing a confidence that had once silenced others. "There's something about authenticity that's being sold to you as rebellion," she said. "I've seen this before. The real story is much messier than the one they're giving you." Liana watched the segment with Kimi and Nene. "They are digging into everything that isn't her strength," Nene said, eyes narrow. "That's because they can't break her foundation. So they are trying to flood the edges with noise." Kimi opened a secured thread. "I've got people tracking the ripple of this. It's not working the way they planned. People are seeing the desperation. Some of Kyoma's allies are starting to backtrack." Liana pulled up her own camera, but instead of a polished message, she recorded something raw. "I didn't build this to be fragile," she said into the lens. "They can try to turn shadows into accusations, but the light isn't coming from them. It's coming from what we've been doing while they were busy commenting." The clip was short. It went out unbranded. No heavy narration. No campaign styling. It landed like a breath in a room where everyone had been holding theirs. The public responded with authenticity. She's not defensive. She's owning it. Influencers pushed back on the smear in quick side videos. "Kyoma wants you to believe this is a theft narrative. She's the one who laughed first." The chapter closes with Kyoma watching a live reaction stream, her fury replaced by a slow realization that her sabotage was turning into a larger reflection of her own insecurity. In a quiet moment, her strategist whispers, "We've escalated. The public is tired of villains. Maybe we should pivot to concerned commentator." Kyoma stays at the screen, the buffer between power and fracture thinning, while in another frame, Elle's billboard pulses in the night, untouched, unwavering, and now, more than ever, unbreakable. The staged celebratory meetup between Zayn and Elle Amani was meant to look like synergy, an engineered handshake framed by soft lighting and controlled smiles. Instead, it became the stage for something neither of them anticipated. They stood side by side on a minimalist platform at a high-profile media gala. Cameras flashed. Commentators whispered about tech aligning with beauty and the mystery behind Elle Amani. In the audience, influencers loaded their feeds live. Zayn's team had written talking points, Shared vision, mutual empowerment, African excellence. Elle had her own script, only it wasn't written by anyone else. When the moderator asked about the origin story and the apparent tension between the two brands, the room leaned in. Zion gave a practiced, diplomatic answer about collaboration and evolving markets. Then the microphone passed to Elle. She stepped forward, not into the spotlight to be polished, but to own it. "I'm Elle Amani," she said, her voice precise, layered with calm strength. "The woman you saw at the gala was not an omission. She was a choice to stay quiet while the world defined her. I didn't disappear. I evolved." The camera cut to Zion, whose smile flickered, not out of shock, but because something in her words reframed the narrative. Elle continued, "They tried to pigeonhole me, refine me to their comfort. I didn't want to be made over. I wanted to be recognized. Today, I'm not asking for permission. I'm stating the truth. I'm the architect of this brand. I own every version of myself." The room held a collective breath. Social feeds lit up in real time. She just said what everyone was thinking. Not a denial, a declaration. Later, in curated clips and rapidly edited highlights, her phrase, "I own every version of myself," became a banner. Zion's controlled synergy language suddenly felt pale compared to the raw clarity of Elle's public response. Backstage, Zion found her. "You didn't need to do that," he said, the tone ambiguous. Was it rebuke, admiration, or wounded admission? "I didn't do it for you," she replied. "I did it for everyone who ever felt invisible because someone else defined their worth." The fallout was powerful. Investors, brand strategists, and cultural commentators paused every syllable. Some praised her bravery, others whispered about possible hubris. The thing that couldn't be taken away was that she set the terms of conversation. Kyoma's attempt to destabilize looked, in comparison, like noise from a fading static. Her camp tried to spin Elle's declaration as arrogance disguised as empowerment, but the public had already recoded the meaning. Strength, not ego. The chapter ends with Elle watching the clip of her speech on a small screen, Kimi beside her, and Nene in the background quietly smiling. The camera pulls back to show billboards across the city with her face now paired with that line, and the pulsating heartbeat of Lagos amplifying her message. The undercurrent. She didn't just survive the SME, she turned it into a platform that no one could control. Zion's team had been preparing contingency language for weeks. What started as strategic positioning and tentative partnership talk now had morphed into a full-scale power negotiation. Elle Amani's brand had launched not just as a competitor, but as a cultural mirror, and Zion's company had inadvertently used her image, likeness, and emerging narrative in internal AI-generated advertising datasets without her explicit consent. Darker patterns emerged, subtle repurposings of campaign aesthetics into product inspiration, decks distributed within his circles, uncredited and ethically grey. Liana wasn't a lawyer, but she had surrounded herself with people who understood leverage. Nene had arranged for a class-action-minded intellectual property attorney to meet with her. "This isn't just about money," the attorney said. "It's about signal. If they can use your image to simulate influence without consent, what message does that send? This is a moment to draw a line." The lawsuit was filed publicly. The complaint alleged unauthorized use of Elle Amani's image derivatives in training materials for Zion's luxury branding AI, violation of image rights, and manipulation of consumer trust through implied affiliation. The media, already saturated with her origin and rise, now had a new twist, a woman suing the empire that once ignored her for appropriation of her very essence. Zion's camp responded with the expected, "We were exploring synergy." His legal team framed the usage as industry-standard inspiration mining. But the public knew the difference. Elle had been clear, transparent, and awake. The counter-narrative smelled, to many, like opacity dressed in corporate calm. During the pre-trial press conference, Liana stood beside her attorney, not with rage, but dignity. "I didn't build Elle Amani to be stolen, hidden, or sanitized," she said. "My image, My story, my identity, those are not datasets to be mined without consent. This isn't a personal fight. This is a bridge for all creators who have had their brilliance repackaged without acknowledgement. The suit reverberated globally. Legal commentators debated the implications. Influencers made side-by-side breakdowns showing how specific visuals had been reproposed, sometimes algorithmically, within Zayn's internal pitches. The public felt validated for having suspected the appropriation before it was publicly named. Tega Mensa, watching the spectacle, leaned into the camera for a statement. She set the standard, he said. This isn't resistance. It's the blueprint. Zayn's defenses faltered not because she had proven she was right, they always suspected it, but because her narrative had grown teeth. This was not the underdog story of being ignored anymore. This was the story of a woman who'd turned systemic invisibility into legal precedent. The chapter closes with the first hearing date announced on global feeds, her lawsuit now a cultural pivot. Zayn, in the quiet of his office, stays at the framed image of a younger version of himself who believed in legacy. On the opposite side, Elle walks into the courthouse, her posture unbroken, and the world watches. She could have done it privately. She could have filed, signed, and walked away. But Liana was not here to make quiet statements anymore. She was here to reclaim the stage where it began. The same Gala hall where her humiliation had first echoed was booked again, not for a product launch, but for the annual African Leadership and Beauty Summit. The banners were new, but the memory of glassy eyes and sharp tongues lingered in the corners. She arrived, now fully recognized as Elle Amani, dressed in a clean white ensemble symbolic of new beginnings. Cameras captured, and the world took note. Zayn was in the audience, seated in a reserved front row, the same place that had once positioned him as the anchor. During the keynote, she requested the stage. The organizers, knowing the ripple she carried, didn't refuse. The lights dimmed slightly, not for drama, but for focus. I've worn titles given to me, Liana began. Wife. Invisible. Token. Today, I wear the truth. I am Elle Amani. I am Liana Okoro. I am the woman who built, reclaimed, and chose herself. The audience absorbed her. The cameras cut live to global feeds. Then, on large screens behind her, the divorce papers appeared, served, signed, and the timing deliberate. The announcer's voice didn't narrate the sensationalism. Liana did. This is the official end of partnership that never honored the full woman it included. I'm here to say, I'm free from any tie that tried to define me without consent. The name wife was never enough. I'm the founder. I'm the voice. I'm the movement. Heart skipped. Comments exploded. Live stream titles updated. Elle Amani serves divorce papers to Zayn Okafor on stage. Gala turns into reckoning. Zayn's face, composed, flickered behind the mask of public calm. This was not a quiet separation. It was a broadcast of autonomy. The divorce announcement hit multiple layers. It was legal. It was symbolic. It was cathartic. It told a story of a woman who didn't need to wait for permission to exit and re-enter on her terms. Later, backstage, Zayn approached, not with theatrics, but with something that had evolved beyond pity. You made your point. I made my life, she corrected. He nodded, eyes briefly meeting hers. The tension lingered, but below it, something like recognition of loss and, for him, maybe the flash of a regret he hadn't fully processed. The chapter concludes with a silent cutaway, the gala's main hall now lit with flashing headlines in real time, and in a quiet side room, Kimi and Nene watching the replay, unshaken. The world had witnessed not just a divorce, but a full narrative reset. Elle's brand didn't drop in public opinion, it rose. Freedom, when wielded deliberately, becomes a platform. Elle Amani no longer needed the shockwaves. She was the tidal current. Invitation after invitation arrived. Global beauty forums, African heritage summits, leadership panels, and women in business conferences wanted her insight. Her voice overseas carried both authority and authenticity. The story of transformation, from mocked wife to sovereign brand owner, was cited as case study in business schools and cultural commentaries. Her keynote at the World Forum on Beauty and Identity in Dubai was streamed in multiple languages. She talked about something deeper than aesthetics. Visibility without agency is vanity. Authenticity is not the absence of criticism. It's the presence of ownership. The brand expanded beyond skincare. Elle Amani became not just a name but a movement, a foundation that funded young black women in tech and beauty entrepreneurship across Africa, providing grants, coaching, and narrative consulting to those previously silenced. Campaigns featured the real faces of the continent, unfiltered but elevated with intention. Zayn's company was now in reactive mode. Offerings that could have been collaborative had become attempts to reposition while she was already speaking on global stages. Tega Mensa's partnership became a marquee textbook example of strategic alignment with emerging culture. Elle was doing interviews from London to Johannesburg, each time pulling in stories about resilience, how silence could be an incubation and not surrender. The transformation came full circle when she was invited back to the original Gala venue, this time as a headliner and honorary chair for the next summit. The banner read, "Rewrite the narrative." In a private interview, a young entrepreneur asked, "Was any of this revenge?" Elle smiled. "Revenge is reactive. What I built was proactive. They gave me a script. I tore it up and wrote one that included everyone who had been told to disappear. That's influence. That's legacy." The chapter ends with a montage, billboards in New York, Accra, Nairobi, and Paris with her face, young women in makeshift studios around Lagos modeling their own brands with the confidence she normalized, and a final shot of Elle standing on a stage in front of a global audience, raising her hand not for applause, but as a signal, the world has shifted. 1 year later, the same venue bore a new name, the Amani Center for Vision and Beauty. The gala that once mocked her was now an annual summit celebrating creators who refused to be defined by others. The red carpet bore the legacy of resilience, framed photographs showing the journey, from the night of humiliation to the sign that read, in quiet gold letters, built from the echoes they tried to silence. "Oh, Liana," walked through the entrance. The applause wasn't polite, it was sustained. Faces in the crowd included former detractors turned respectful silence, allies she'd uplifted, and everyday people who had followed her from the beginning. The moment was full circle in the most precise way. She had returned to the place of origin not as someone seeking validation, but as the architect of the space itself. She paused at the foot of the stage, looked out over the sea of faces, and remembered the woman who left that night after the gala, quiet, underestimated, carrying a weight she didn't yet know how to name. The keynote was not about herself. It was about the next generation. "You don't need to wait for an opening," she said. "Build the door. Carry the light. When they doubt you, remember, their story of you is a draft. You have the right to rewrite, publish, and own every edition." As the summit closed, a young designer approached, holding a prototype package with her own face and a note, inspired by Elle Amani. "Thank you." Liana took it, placed a hand on the designer's shoulder, and said, "Now go make someone else's full cycle." The final scene is quiet. The camera pulls back slowly from the Amani Center glowing under evening lights. Lagos hums beneath, different, louder, more inclusive. Her billboard still stands nearby, but now it shares space with new ones, stories of others who'd used their silence to build. The last frame, Liana stepping into a mirrored hallway, her reflection countless, each version recognized, each version hers. Fade out on the words that became a movement, she owned every version. The end.